I did my biofuel video project on biodiesel, which is a biofuel that's kind of come into play in history for a while, but applications have actually been a little bit more recent. So this is a presentation on its uses and effects. So in researching and doing a little bit of background on biodiesel, this research started actually in the early 20th century. In 1890, diesel was developed. And then looking for alternatives, biodiesel was something that was also put into play. It was put into use a little bit more during the Second World War, as diesel shortages were very, very high, very prevalent. And the same thing happened during 9/11 when we shut down import of diesel or production of diesel. So the production of biodiesel went up by about a billion gallons. Um, Biofuel is created through a process called transesterification. So it breaks down an oil into esters, specifically fatty acid methyl esters. They are much less viscous and easy to burn. The viscosity change actually is much easier on engines, as it takes a lot less for them to move through. So your engine wear actually is decreased by using this kind of biodiesel. Original oils, so vegetable oil being one of the things, we can access those through recycling, just taking from restaurants or food plants or things like that. Vegetable oil is made by crushing vegetable components and extracting those unwanted parts. So you're just left with the oil. And those things can also be extracted using a chemical solvent. This is a little less popular for us using chemicals in things that we're going to consume. But then it is purified using high heat, which removes water. It goes from about 200 degrees Celsius to about 220 degrees Celsius when you're actually removing those water components. So everything should be gone except for the oil that's left. Other things like cooking oil, soybean oil, and animal fat can be used to produce biodiesel. The carbon footprint. So with a lot of biofuels, it decreases the overall carbon footprint, produces less sulfur dioxide, air particulates, things like that, especially in burning it. However, when it does combust, which is something that's used in engines, you make it combust, it produces a little bit more nitrogen oxide in comparison to petroleum diesel. So it's always something to look at as kind of comparison and something to look at further research as how can we mitigate this or change this. So it's development and then kind of the economical side of things. The prices. So diesel right now is at an average about 3.88 a gallon. B20 is your most versatile biodiesel, and that actually is 11 cents less a gallon, which I was personally surprised by. B99 to B100 is 4.53 a gallon, and that is your stuff that's meant for more industrial machinery. So big engines, things like production facilities, big vehicles, but your smaller things, lawnmowers, even small cars that require diesel. Now, you don't really get a small car that requires diesel. However, those smaller engines, as a general rule, it's cheaper to go with biodiesel, which I thought was pretty cool. Production, the U.S. produces about 73.5 billion gallons of diesel a year, and 1.6 out of that 73.5 is biodiesel. It actually peaked in production at around 2018. We've come down from there a little bit. Right now it is at about 1.6. That's the data I used. However, it was about 1.87 billion in 2018. And as a general trend, what we look at financially, renewable fuels are about the same price as regular fuel, which I thought was pretty cool and something that we definitely look forward to, especially as decisions like this is whether you're going to go biofuel or regular fuel, can be greatly influenced by the economics of it. So in making this popularized, biodiesel specifically hasn't had a ton of marketing. Something I haven't seen, something I haven't really been able to find. It's been seen in things that are like general call for more environmentally friendly fuels, as a lot of climate activists are just pointing out that in general, our fuel usage right now is very unhealthy for our environment, very unhealthy for us. But for biodiesel, as I discussed a little bit before, we saw increases and actually calls for it specifically when there were regular diesel shortages, like the 9/11 terrorist attacks and World War II. So looking at this data and kind of having it all laid out, it's definitely something that we should be investing in, putting more research, giving it more attention. Of course, looking at that climate side of it, we should take a little bit of caution, as a lot of research should be put into it. However, investing into it, putting money into it, allows us to carry out that research. It does have a lot of versatility, and it provides the fuel that we need, as well as a ton of employment opportunities, as it does require that process of refining oil and breaking it down, as well as acquiring that oil. So you get a lot of jobs from it too. So economically, it benefits us in many, many ways. Accessibility is kind of the biggest proponent of spreading this around. So I think probably your biggest option for that is implementing it at gas stations and home use. But of course, that can be accessed through gas stations. But just having that option for people, that option to say, hey, I can make this green choice. It doesn't cost, as much or not that much more. And I think having that laid out in front of you and being like, oh, I can actually do this, I think that makes it a real option for us. Something else that I mentioned, it's less corrosive to equipment than regular diesel. So in preserving that equipment, you're actually also reducing the environmental impacts there, because you don't have to produce as many of those items, many of those engines, parts that take a lot of fuel, or putting a gas into the environment, or corrosive material into the environment that it takes to produce those items, whereas our engines. Whereas when you have something that's less corrosive to those engines, you don't have to do that as much, and in turn, it's kind of killing two birds with one stone idea. So that's my little presentation on biofuel, or biodiesel specifically, and these are my resources. So thank you.